Good evening. I'm David Ferriero, the Archivist of the United States, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to the William G. McGowan Theater here at the National Archives on this, the 227th anniversary of the signing of the United States Constitution. And I also want to welcome those of you who are joining us on YouTube. Tonight, we'll engage in a conversation about the state of the Constitution. Is the Constitution still working for America? To introduce our distinguished panel, please welcome Doug Smith.
Thank you, David. Well, good evening. Throughout this week, and especially today, Constitution Day, communities across the country have been celebrating this Charter of Freedom, the U.S. Constitution. And we are so pleased to be here with the National Archives for what is one of the nation's capstone events for Constitution Day. I want to welcome you to the McGowan Theater at the National Archives and welcome those who are joining us on the web. We're being live streamed this evening. There should be ample conversation towards the end of our program. And when we get to that point, and I will encourage you to bring questions for the panel, let me encourage you to go directly to the microphones on each side of the theater where you'll have a chance to ask questions of the panel. So please join me in inviting our distinguished panel this evening, the Honorable Robert Hurt. He represents the 5th District of the U.S. House of Representatives. He's a member of the Financial Services Committee. He's on the Housing and Insurance Subcommittee. Akil Reed Amar of the law school at Yale. I call him America's favorite con law professor. Akil, welcome. And Ben Wittes, our dear friend from the Brookings Institution and the Lawfare blog. Ben, welcome to the stage. Okay, gentlemen, the question for the night. Is the Constitution still working for the United States? Is it still working for the people?
Yes, pending in the U.S. District Court is a civil action to enforce the malapportionment penalty of the second section of the 14th Amendment to reduce the representation of representatives in Congress in states that award their electors on a winner-take-all basis that is not grounded in state law. In the former Confederate states, that's North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. Why is this provision? Well, this is to correct the 15th Amendment, which is working for the Caucasian, but is not working for the non-Caucasian. And we can correct that by enforcing that provision of the Constitution that was championed by the abolitionists that punished former Confederate states to disfranchise the new those former enslaved by reducing their representation, not allowed them to sit in Congress until they granted that franchise to those of African descent before the 15th Amendment was even in the Constitution. Why is it that progressive organizations are not trying to enforce this provision of the Constitution? It's Gordon versus the clerk of the House of Representatives. I'm the Gordon.
One of the most interesting things about the written Constitution is that it endures. There are clauses, they are dormant. They're not enforced for long stretches of time. But then, like Sleeping Beauty or Rip Van Winkle, they do have the ability to reawaken and be re-energized. When I went to law school, people used to kind of scoff about the 10th Amendment. You know, it was kind of a punchline to a joke. And now there are lots of people, but it was in the Constitution. So people and so it always had the possibility of being reinvigorated, as it, I think, has been legally and politically. 15 years ago, not so many people thought the Second Amendment meant much of anything. There was very little case law about it, but it's in the written Constitution and has this capacity to reawaken. There are still clauses for long portions of time. Lots of the 14th Amendment, even Section 1, wasn't really enforced, and then the Warren Court came along. There's a part of the Constitution, the Republican form of government, hasn't been very robustly judicially enforced. There's a lawsuit right now in Colorado actually trying to make it justiciable, make it more enforceable. Section 2 hasn't been enforced of the 14th Amendment. It's conventionally thought for a very long time. We actually have the world's expert on Section 2 of the 14th Amendment here. It's not yours truly. It's actually a student of mine who wrote a brilliant paper on this. He's sitting right next to you, so you should ask Tom Schmidt. Raise your hand. He wrote a great paper on this, and raise your hand, Tom. Okay, you can talk to him afterwards, because he wrote a paper on this dormant clause of the Constitution, and you should talk to him afterwards about what happened to that clause. So,
invite me to Yale. I can make a presentation on this, and I can interact with him because I
well, Tom is now at Columbia, but